Okay, we have got a quorum and it is 6:03 PM. So we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. So I'm calling us to order. You can either stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance or stay seated and take a moment of silent meditation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have 2 months of minutes to approve. So the first one we're going to take a look at is the September 19th, 2024 business meeting minute. Is there a motion to approve the September 19th minutes?
I'll move.
Alish, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Keith, is there any discussion, corrections, or changes to the September minutes? Okay, all in favor of approval of the September 19th minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And, okay, and Tony is abstaining.
Yep, I have that.
Perfect. Welcome, Barbara. We're just on to the October approval of the October business meeting minutes. So do we have a motion to approve the October business meeting minutes from October 17th, 2024? Thank you, Barbara. Is there a second? Thanks, Dorina. Is there any discussion, changes, or corrections? Okay, thank you. I'm also
Corey.
abstaining.
Yep, and Michael Foster. Yeah.
Okay. So with those 3 abstentions, any other corrections, discussion? All in, oh, go ahead.
Pass with the abstentions then?
1,
Oh,
2,
We run in and.
yeah, no, that'll give us 5.
3,
So
4,
that's enough.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then we're.
so we,
good.
yeah,
Okay,
we're,
Yeah.
Just check it.
Yeah.
Check it.
Yeah. So all in favor of approving the October 17th business meeting minutes, please say aye. So that's
Aye.
Tony. Okay. Thank you. So that is approved as well. I believe that we have some public input to be shared.
Yes, I have some comment cards to share that were in our Dropbox. Okay. Emily, Sam, and another woman at the info desk whose name I didn't get were very helpful today in navigating the functionality. I deeply appreciate their helpfulness and pleasant manner. Please acknowledge them. Another one, Seth and Maura were absolutely exceptional. They were patient beyond expectations, kind, knowledgeable, and helpful. They dismissed their expertise as simply what we're here for, but truly they went above and beyond. I'm working on sub-basic PC skills and they never fail to get the results I needed. Please acknowledge them. Thank you. Also, Sam at the info desk was exceptionally kind, patient, and helpful with PC troubleshooting beyond what anyone could hope for. Please be sure she knows I am deeply appreciative of her exceptional, extraordinary, above and beyond help. I thanked them personally, but management needs to know they were at 200%. Another card reads, is it possible to put a small shelf or small table in the restroom so that a borrower can get down a book or a bag of books on a dry place while washing their hands? Thank you for your consideration. I also received good job. Another one, nice place, very nice staff, love the book. Another comment, weekday Qigong and chair yoga afternoons.
Oh, they're asking that.
Request for programming.
Please start offering old paperbacks for sale in the lobby like the library did before construction. Thanks. I like the library. However, there seems to be a lack of new nonfiction books, especially technology. Signed, D. Cooper. That's all I have.
Thanks for sharing, Amy.
Well, anyone in person?
Oh, Byron.
Yeah.
Thank you. Since there's no other public input at this time, we will move on to personnel actions. We have 3 personnel actions on our list. And apologies, she just told me how to say her last name, but I'm gonna read it and hopefully I get close at least. So our 3 personnel actions are to approve the appointment of Allison Jadav, thank you, as Human Resources Manager on November 13th, 2024, to approve the appointment of Joanne Mulligan as a substitute librarian on November 13th, 2024, and to accept the resignation of Alice Van Cleve, Senior Clerk, on October 15th, 2024. Do we have a motion to approve those personnel actions stated? Thank you, Marcia, and Barbara is seconding. Okay. Is there any discussion?
Is Joanne Mulligan our Joanne Mulligan?
Okay. Any other discussion?
Welcome to Allison.
You what?
Welcome to Allison.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
welcome.
Pete is going to officially welcome her in just a
Sure.
moment. So, but yes, welcome. And with that stated, all in favor of approving the personnel actions, please say aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Great. Up next, we have the illustrious George giving us the treasurer's report for October 2024.
All right, in your package, we'll take a look at the balance sheet first. And looking down to line 2, our short-term investments went from about 2.9 million to 6.7 million. We did get in the tax levy in October of 4,128,000, which is about 94% of our total tax levy. A little bit more than we got last year in October. I think that was about the only thing that's sort of unique on the balance sheet. Turning the page to the statement of revenue and expenses. We do show that the tax levy came in for 4.1 million that I just talked about. I always take the budget and make the budget the same as the receipts because we know that throughout the course of the year, regardless of the timing, whether it comes in October, December, May, that it will be what we had budgeted, the tax levy. There may be adjustments or refunds, but the actual tax levy will always be the same. So we'll never see a budget variance for that line item. Tuesday night, we looked at a few different variances. I guess, first of all, salaries and wages are favorable. Pete did say that, there were plans to make a couple new hires. He might not have said a couple, he might have said 3 or 4. I may have rounded to a couple. But I think that we'll still come close to the budget for the year. We had some investigation costs in line 10, professional fees. Building maintenance is a little bit over, and I forgot what that was.
Cooling tower.
Oh, yes, yeah. Technology, at least half of that was startup expenses for the payroll conversion. That's, I think, starting where it will soon start. So overall, and the interest and investment income is up because of the tax levy that's now in our account, and it was deposited into the short-term investments within 3 days of receipt, which is very good. The interest is up. It'll be up a little bit more next month because I think that the tax levy was invested around the 21st of October. So we only got in about 10 days. So we're not with some of the unfavorable variances, we're not as favorable as we were in prior months, but on a year-to-date basis, if you look down the line 31 all the way to the right, we're still quite favorable on mostly expenses. going to go right into the
I am fine with rolling right into the check register if you.
check register. So we reviewed the check register. And I guess in looking at it, I'm always reminded when I see the modest amount that we pay for Albright Aquariums, how lucky we are to have the aquarium there that my grandson loves. So if anybody ever speaks out against that, that would not be good. But you can anyways. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else sort of unique or different on that. They did put a little more description under the last line, Citizens Bank, which is the credit card company of some of the items that were purchased there, since it's not always obvious by the Citizens Bank description. Any questions on any of those disbursements?
George, just a question. I don't know if I just don't have it in my packet, but usually we get a sheet that has the budget, year to date and things such as that, but it's not in my packet. And
Yeah, I think.
We were just taking your word for it.
It's not in
The
there?
incoming expenses just didn't manage to make it.
Well, that's just, I brought my own. I mean,
It was just an omission from the packet. They got left out. The two-
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
two items.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so, I didn't realize that because I didn't get it.
I was letting you be,
I didn't
you know,
Or it's-
Very into my brain.
That's been stopping it.
Well, it doesn't have the check register either?
No, it doesn't.
No,
We do
that-
have- we have the check register.
Well, that's all anybody ever looks at. You don't care about the financial statements. It's like, but the check
Here,
register, you can just.
Clearly, we can't. I mean,
Could you just forward it to the full board? Is that all right? Do you have a copy of it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to do that?
Or do
You have one?
I'll check to see if I have it. And I will send it to you guys.
It wasn't, because the finance committee got it, because we went
Yeah.
over
You know,
it for Tuesday, so I know it one of them did some of it.
It's very possible I forgot to copy you on the email.
I'm very sure that I probably, I have three things from you. Financial statement, check register, and investment report.
Yeah.
What did I not include?
Financial statement.
The
We
first-
have the, we have the
That's
one page.
the investment, yeah, the one, that's the one that lists like the.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Gotcha. All right, I will send it on right now.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Well, I am so
My
sorry,
apologies.
because it would have been a lot better if you could actually see it and everything.
It was
you know?
riveting.
Like,
It really, they kept.
I mean, I'm not gonna get comments like on those comment cards if we don't hand it out and everything, so. So the investment report, someone asked, there's copies of all the statements attached to the investment report and a summary on the first page that I think is there. I see it here
Yeah.
anyways. Which agrees back to the balance sheet. And someone asked, should you be looking for anything in particular? And I think the answer is you're more than welcome to look at all of the detail that is included and ask questions. But it's really kind of a best practice that we include copies of the bank statement just as sort of, evidence that they exist and everything. And there's something, backing that up. What I do, I get copies of the statements get sent to me and I look at them and I compare them back to the general ledger. I look at NBT Bank directly. I log in and look at it usually before the meeting just to look at different things. And if there was something unusual, I would ask management, about it and everything. But the backup will show, for example, for NBT Bank on the IntraFi account that we now have over $4 million. It will show the detail of all the CDs backing that up, and they'll all be less than the statutory maximum, which I think is 250,000. So you'll see that. And, we try to make, well, we don't try to make sure all of our investments are secure either by FDIC or their government securities. And I think that NBT Bank would give us a letter of security. I forgot what they call it at the end of the month if we have balances that go over the maximum. I forgot what it's called, but the fire department does the same thing. Any government entity gets that. So I guess it's good to have it distributed, but there's nothing in particular that you have to, look at or anything. And I guess when I review them, I have read-only access to the bank accounts. I can't initiate any transactions. So, I just look at it to make sure that everything looks normal and everything. So if that helps.
Or what about the deposits that are, we're looking at investment policy, we're not ready for it yet, but just a
Yep.
general question. What about deposits that are above the FDIC insurance rate? Are those collateralized?
They are collateralized, but I don't believe there are any right now.
Yeah, I didn't, just looking at these quickly, I didn't think there were
Yeah,
any, but they would be required to collateralize.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we get a letter from NBT Bank and I forgot what it is, a collateralization letter. We had some investments, we had some, I think, T-bills that are government securities that would be okay.
Yeah.
Before, I forgot, close to maybe $1 million or something, but they replaced those with CDs, and the CDs at Broadview are all less than 250. And the IntraFi account is all less than 250, which is why they set it up to take
Thanks,
care of that.
Thanks, George. Are there any other questions for George about the check register? Do we have a motion to approve the check register for October 2024?
Make the motion.
Thank you, Mike Key. Do we have a second? Thank you, Bill. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor of approving the October 2024 check register, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions? Check register passes. Okay, over to Pete for the directors and department heads report.
Much appreciated. Good evening, everyone. I believe in jumping straight to the main course. We want to do appetizers. I am very pleased to introduce our new HR manager, Allison. Allison is, of course, here tonight. Thank you for joining us. A few words from me, and then I'd like Allison to introduce herself. Allison came to us with over 15 years of experience in her field, so very well traveled, well experienced. Most recently at Bethesda House in Schenectady, New York. A couple of things that made Allison stand out to us as the best candidate and our choice for this position: an understanding of public service and human services, really understands, helping everyone that comes into the public library, but also her human touch. We felt Allison would relate really well to our staff, and it's important to us that our staff feel not only supported, but also that they can work with someone that they trust. So with that introduction, Allison, please say a few words about yourself.
Do you want me to stand or?
I want you to be comfortable.
Okay, then I'm gonna just sit down if it's okay with everyone. But like Pete said, my name is Allison Rodriguez Jadov. Yes, I have over 15 years of experience in human resources. I started out in the travel industry. So I worked with Air France and I worked with Delta Airlines. Of course, I was heavily recruiting at that point of time, both for ground staff as well as cabin crew. After that, I took a break because I had my son and there was just too much traveling happening. My husband was traveling, I was traveling, and somebody needed to take a back seat. And so that fell on me. And finally, when I decided to join the workforce again, it was difficult. After 5 years, nobody really wants you. So I got the opportunity to work at St. Coleman's. Now, St. Coleman's, if y'all are not aware, is a school which deals with children with disabilities. So I worked with children on the autism spectrum, and that was a whole new ballgame for me, but it was very interesting. And I think I worked with them for about 2.5 years, and then COVID hit. So with COVID, everything shut down. It was sad for the kids because they do need structure and a certain routine, but unfortunately that didn't work out. And then I went on to my next adventure, which was Capital EAP. And I was in an employee assistance program, so I know the ins and outs of, working with EAP. After that, I got the opportunity to work with the Research Foundation for SUNY. It was after COVID and we were in the reopening phases. And so I was based here in Albany while the rest of my staff were in New York City. we dealt with digital labs. So our department was UCORD, which was the University Center for Academic Workforce Development. And we provided services to the underserved residents of New York State. We were a small department. I enjoyed working over there, but there was no future growth for me. And so after that, I joined Bethesda House, which is a homeless shelter here in Schenectady. And we had about three facilities at that time. And when I joined, they had opened a brand new facility, which was Cara House, and that kind of took care of the incarcerated population. And so I think I worked as the HR manager there. It was a one department person, so everything from recruiting to employee relations to benefits, unemployment, everything was, I was in charge of it. And after that, I was looking out for new opportunities, you know, a little closer to home. Schenectady was quite a hike for me as well. And this fell into my lap. But I must say, my 1 week over here has been fantastic. I have enjoyed working with all the staff that I have met. I still have a lot more to meet, and I look forward to working with all of them. So yeah, that's just a little about me.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Allison. We're trying not to oversell it. We are extraordinarily happy to have Allison here with us. Natalie is here as well. Allison reports to Natalie in Natalie's role as Assistant Director for Internal Operations. Natalie has been handling our human resources work for the past almost a year.
Yeah, February would be a year.
February's a year. So it's important to us that we cross-train and that we're able to back each other up and no one staff member is responsible for all of our operations, because that's not very fair to our staff. So I expect them to work closely together and back each other up. We are also, as George alluded to in his report, we are in the process of onboarding 3 new librarian ones, and we are in final interview stages for our marketing specialist. When we get all of these positions filled, we'll be at about 65 employees, which is where we were when I started. So we'll be back to what I think of as full staffing, but you know, I don't want to jinx anything, so knock on wood. I separated my report a little bit differently just for clarity this month, but I'm going to skip over facilities to finish with that. Read or Treat, formerly known as Shrunk or Treat. Thank you to everyone who came and volunteered. Over 700 total attendees, including 300 children, which is really our target audience for a trick-or-treat event. So that is fantastic. We had, unless I'm forgetting someone, 3 board volunteers at the event: Corey Dugas, Narina Melita, and Michael Puspers. Pictures in the report of all of you in costume. Also, a mysterious 4th person dressed in a dragon costume. I don't know who that could have been.
Green, he likes green.
Easy, I might be giving it away, tipping my hand. And then I listed everyone who I wanted to shout out in the report. I'm going to read their names because I think it's important. We had so many staff volunteers at this event: Amy Dubray, Nate Hare, Brianna Wakowitz, Sean Silvernail, Emily Viscuso, Maura Powers-Smith, Sarah Russo, Jacob Harden, Carly Drislane, Melissa Klimek, Kathy Zazarine, Holly Andrio, Priya Desai, Ella Geary, Lindsay Fox, Nicole DeGradio, Sam Christensen Trippy, Elizabeth Smith, Quinn Chen, Sarah Baldy, Adriana Permet, and Jason Symington. This is not, I'm not naming our teen volunteers, the volunteers from the foundation, and all the community partners, including the police and fire department. That is an incredible turnout. So round of applause for the volunteers. And I'm glad you didn't sneak out Natalie, because none of this would have been possible without the planning and coordination of Natalie Hurto. This project was Natalie's baby, and it went off, I'm gonna say without a hitch. If there was a hitch, I didn't see one. So I'm always like, I can't think of any other way to say how proud I am of our staff than to read their names and to acknowledge them, because I'm always at a loss of words. It takes a village to pull off these massive programs, and we do it for the benefit of the community. And it is not easy. It is difficult work. We had staff members and volunteers pushing bookcases, leaf-blowing trash off the floor at the end of the night, like any duties you can think of. But it's worth doing. So it's incredible. I'm so happy, and I hope next year we have similar success.
344 days.
Who's counting? from a practical standpoint, one of the important things we wanted to learn from this was a proof of concept of what kind of effort it takes to move our furniture around and turn this into an event space. I can confidently say it was easier than we expected. Again, I don't want to jinx it, but I thought it would be a lot harder. It takes some effort, but it is doable. So in the future, if we want to host events in here, we now know we've got a benchmark of what it'll take to do it. Continuing education, several of us attended the NYLA conference in beautiful Syracuse, New York. Myself, Natalie, and two of our staff members, Wilsonia Ocasio and Sam Christensen Trippy, who is also the Sam that was called out in the phrase at the beginning of the meeting. NYLA is a great educational experience. Natalie, I might ask you to say a few things about what you learned, if there's anything you want to call out. For me, we learned about crisis management, building construction, volunteer recruitment, and community engagement, all of which I think are going to be very important as our long-range plan rolls along. Natalie, anything that you attended that you thought of that was?
Yeah, I thought the crisis management was incredibly helpful, and just, it kind of scares you at first of all the things you can't think of that could happen, but it helps to be able to brainstorm with a bunch of, your colleagues across the state. And then also just saying that, like, the networking, it is an awesome opportunity just to see everybody from across the state. And, it's kind of our generation of librarians is coming up, and it's really great to see that connection and taking on that responsibility of leading NYLA for the next young generation.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalie. A couple of things I wanted to shout out. Election Day has come and gone, as you may know, because you may have voted here. The library hosts early voting as well as Election Day voting. The Board of Elections were great communicators, good partners. I really enjoyed working with them and partnering with them. And it's just important to have these opportunities to center the library in the community, to bring in people who are not traditional library users, and to remind them of the importance and value of the library as a community gathering place. As a fringe benefit, the Library's Sunshine Committee, which is dedicated to staff morale, held a fundraising bake sale in the lobby, and they sold out. I came back at the end of the night to buy something and everything was gone. So over $300 raised on Election Day, which is wonderful. We also hosted Drug Take Back Day, a partnership with the GPD. Again, great partners, helps people, draw people to the library that might not ordinarily come. We touched on this again in George's report, and the Finance Committee may wish to speak to this. There's a motion in new business about this. We've begun transitioning from our current payroll software, which is Paylocity. As I've cited as a recurring pain point for us, Paylocity just does not meet the needs of the organization. They're a software service. They don't provide much support when we have errors or things that go wrong. We're kind of on our own. So the library worked with and solicited bids from 3 different vendors. Paycom was the middle bid. Paylocity was the lowest bid, as we know, not meeting our needs. ADP was the third bidder, came in twice the price of Paycom. So we're looking at an annual increase of about $9,000 and a one-time cost of $6,000, but it will be worth it to eliminate the mistakes and the errors and make sure our staff have full confidence in our payroll and benefits administration. We're working on long-range planning, as I think we will talk about. Leading into long-range planning, we are doing internal work to get a baseline for the library's current strategies on collections, programming, outreach, and customer service. Good to know where we are before we decide where we're going. And the Personnel Committee will talk about this, but I'm really looking forward to carrying out my own goals as your library director. A lot of the work's not going to be glamorous. I will be yearning for some exciting projects at some point, but this is important work that we're going to be doing, and I'm looking forward to it. And then to circle back to the last thing I want to talk about, facilities. Don't want to steal too much of Bill's thunder. In terms of the recurring issues with our skylight, I have done a lot of research. I am probably the second most knowledgeable person at the table behind Barbara on the history of the building. I've seen your name on some of the old motions, Barbara. I know you know the history of this building. I did re-engage with BRMA. They were the architectural firm that did the renovation in the library. They're familiar with our building on a pretty deep level. I have a high level of confidence in them. It was good to talk to them about their philosophy of the building, the kind of work they could do for us, just to kind of indicate how important it is to work with architects and to work with people who have connections. The architect firm BRMA recommended a subcontractor look at the skylight, and they gave us the name. I said, I already called them. They blew me off. They blew Jason off too, our facilities manager. One day later, we got a call back from the subcontractor because BRMA reached out to them. So already helpful in removing some barriers. We need to get the skylight diagnosed. We need to actually get to the bottom of what the issue is, but we have a high level of confidence it is not the roof itself. We think it's the skylight. So that's good news. Could be, could have been worse. The other topic I discussed with BRMA is the Norman Skill Room, also known as the cafe space. It's important to me that we at least investigate some other options of what we could do with that space. And we get a firm to help us do some visioning on how the space could be used. I don't think a cafe is going to survive in that space. I think a lot of work would have to be done to the space to get a fully operational cafe in there. And I think if we dedicate that room, real estate is at a premium here. And if we dedicate any one of our spaces to a single activity, that limits our options on meeting spaces, programming spaces, storage, offices. The space can only be used for one thing if it's a cafe. So the vision that I've had is a flex space, something that we can move things around, and it could be a program space one day, it could be a meeting space another day. We could put books for sale in there. I think that the cafe was probably meant to address some community needs that came up in the previous long-range plan. With the new long-range plan kicking off, I think we have an opportunity to re-engage with the public and see if there are other ways that we can meet those community needs besides a cafe. That's everything from me.
Do you have anything specific in mind?
A flex space, something where like
No,
if,
I know, but
oh,
in the flex space parameters, what were you thinking?
so we don't have really good options right now for if we want to do a classroom type setting. If someone wanted to teach, I don't know, the model I've been using is I went to King Arthur's Baking a while ago, and they have a test kitchen where at the front of the room, the instructor sits and there's a camera that points at their table, and then there's TVs so that people can see what they're working on. That would be really good for anything that involves hands-on crafting. So collage, macrame, baking. It would also be good if we had multiple screens in that room. You could teach coding classes, you could teach anything with programming where one person is working on something and everyone else needs to follow along. But I don't think there's any one activity that I would dedicate the space to. If we had furniture that we could move around, it's like, okay, we set it up for a classroom, but then tomorrow somebody's meeting in the space, we configure it a different way. So I think looking at options for both configuration and technology, just to see what it would cost to do some of these things.
Do you envision having any kind of refreshments or, even vending machines, something like that? Coffee, because that was a convenience, the old library. It was a convenience to have a coffee machine, for instance.
I do. I think that there are other ways to skin that cat. Apologies to cat owners in the room. I think, there are other ways that we could address needs for refreshment on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anything, I'm like anything from a Keurig on up, I think we can talk about.
Is there any concern? Well, you said you felt fully confident in this architecture firm. I think those of us that were here for part of working with them or all of working with them, there was a lot left to be desired in those interactions. There was poor follow through, or sometimes things were executed on without the proper approvals, and it caused a lot of rework and expensive retooling of spaces that they had built not that long ago. So what makes you so confident in them versus maybe throwing this out to some other competitors?
So I have a high level of confidence in their knowledge of the building. I think if we bid this out or if we reach out to another architecture firm, we're going to lose some time and some money up front getting them up to speed in our building, whereas BRMA comes prepared. I hear your concerns, and I've dug through some of the history, so I know there's validity there. I think being as direct with them and as hands-on with them, I think maybe not letting them run the project as much as we might have in the past, and keeping that relationship at a place where we're interacting with them more to guide them and being really specific about what we want to do. If we're specific, I've got a higher level of confidence in getting through a smaller scale project.
Is there a way to work with another person out of that office than the one we had been working with previously? I think a lot had to do with that particular person as well, and not the company so much.
Sure, I can investigate. It was, I met with two of their partners, Paul Mays and also Stephen, his last name?
Roland.
Roland, thank you. Yep, so I think it's something we could ask for.
Okay.
Now, who did you call that didn't respond to you and then they called and you got a response?
I forget the name and I don't want to put them on
My
blast on
point is
public
as
record.
follows.
Yeah.
I'm a little disturbed that somebody didn't respond to us initially. And I wouldn't want to have a situation where we had to use BRM to be our intermediary.
Because it costs
For
us
them to be
money.
responsive to us.
I think in that case, it's because skylights are complicated.
Well,
And
That's my concern, you know, meaning that we need somebody to be responsive to us,
sure,
or
You and-
you in particular.
appreciated. You and me both. Our skylight is extraordinarily complicated, which made me feel really smart when I went up there and said, I think this is harder than it should be. And everyone who actually knew what they were talking about was like, it sure is. Yeah, I think in that particular case, their connection to getting somebody willing to work on our skylight might have helped grease that wheel.
Mhm.
But, you know, if we can build a relationship with some of these subcontractors, then we're removing the middle person.
You know, but I remember Ellis's, consternation at sometimes being bypassed.
Often.
Mhm.
You're gonna mention maybe the retainer idea though, so that way we could.
Yeah, so understanding the concerns about working with BRMA specifically, we've only got 2 projects that I'm aware of coming up, like that I've identified as major needs, the skylight and the Norman Skill Room. I had suggested as an idea that maybe we put BRMA on a retainer so that we didn't have to bid out. But in the future, if we go with another architect firm, once we move past these 2 projects, we can do the same thing where we say, we're putting you on retainer as projects come up, you're our architect. And that saves us a little bit of the work of having to go out to bid every time.
What's the timing of this?
So what I'm told with the skylight is that as far as workers are concerned, it's already winter. So they said it'll be a couple of months before they start work on the skylight. We're on our timeline for Norman Skill. We can do that as we want.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this time? We're going to circle back to this issue in just a little bit, but if there's anything else that folks want right now. Okay, thank you for the update, Pete. We have committee reports and just a couple of things before we launch right into the first committee report. So I'm going to ask that if everyone is amenable, feel free to state your objections, that some of these pieces that are new business for the approvals, we move into the committee that it came from, just to move things along a little bit more quickly. I have them marked so I can call them out as we go through the committee reports. And then the second piece is just a matter of sort of how we organize our committees and how things are functioning. But in thinking through sort of standard practice for committees, I'm hopeful that we can move towards actually voting in committees a little bit more. So when the motion comes to the board, it already has the motion that's coming from the committees. So for instance, and I just thought of this example as we were going through, I don't know if there was a quorum or anything, but the finance committee could choose to vote on the check register, and then approving the check register would come to the full board already with a motion. So we just need to second any follow-up discussion. So rather than us making as many recommendations out of committees, we can vote on things, and so it's coming as a motion from the committee. Does that make sense? And is that something the committees are interested in doing?
Well, I mean, it's fine. What's the, as far as in the committee, what formally does the committee have to do to make that like come out as a motion versus, I mean, you know?
Just the language. So looking at your report from,
Because we took votes on each.
You did.
We were doing,
Yeah.
we didn't kind of phrase it as.
so
Motion.
I made my notes on this based on how you do it. You did it in your committee report for yours, which I don't know where it went.
I don't know.
So you have so for instance, if you look at the governance committee report, here's how I took this from the meeting. The library's review of public services policy, there was a motion to recommend. So that's not coming with a motion because we did not have a vote. However, the next two, the social media policy and the library public comment policy have were voted on. These were motions to recommend the adoption and they were voted on. What was the difference? Now I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, the first one, it's because it's a repeal and everything, but these, you actually motioned to recommend to the full board. So that is a motion coming to us. So those just need a second when we get to governance.
Isn't the first one the same? I mean,
I think that the slight difference on that, we can go ahead and bring that to the board as a motion from the committee, but because it's a repeal, we might just want to. But I mean, but just sort of, so the idea behind this is just so that things move forward. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't move quickly now, but so things move forward a little more quickly. So there's a formal stamp of approval from the committee that's coming out of.
yeah, so just, just as a practical matter, so suppose, in our next governance meeting, we have another, policy we want to bring to the full board. As when we vote and make our motion in committee to, what are we're moving to bring this as a motion to the full board, or how do we
Yeah.
frame that instead
you
of saying,
I
instead
can
of saying to recommend this to the whole board, because we did a motion in committee, and a formal motion and a vote, but we were moving to recommend this be it to the board to adopt it. Instead, we should say, we're moving to
I need to pull out my ROR and give you the exact language. There is exact language. if
Matters,
we
I
wanna
wanna
formalize
do it
but
right, so-
No, I appreciate your fastidiousness. I will send around the exact language if you want to use it, but just
All right,
however you vote on it, knowing it's come forward as a motion.
all right.
You don't have to choose to do this, but typically it might speed up how things move along in the flow.
I saw Mike's write up and I thought that was a good format for the facilities. It does tee it up, so it comes in here and it makes a more efficient meeting here.
Absolutely fantastic secretary right there. So that's what I said. So like I said, some of these are motions that are coming out of committees. Some of them are recommendations from committees. I'll try and highlight what I think it is as we move through. But if that's possible, let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it doesn't work for your committee, that's okay. So on to the committee reports. The first one is finance. And Tony, I'll let you speak to anything else.
Yeah, we just met this past Tuesday. George already went through all that stuff, so I don't have to rehash it. We can verify that what he said was true, because we did have a copy of the income statements and everything else that some people didn't have in their packets. There's nothing really standing out, just a couple of recurring businesses. The audit is still ongoing, which we may actually want to think about using different auditors going forward next year. And the other recurring business was moving forward with what reserve funds board. Yeah. Board that we needed funds. Proposal that Mike brought up many months ago, and we haven't really moved forward with. But we should start moving forward with that. The big one is by the tax certiorari and trying to plan for a future one, which there may be at some point, so. That was it.
Any other questions for Tony regarding the report? So there is one note on new business that says it was recommended by the finance committee, and that is to approve the transition to Paycom for the library's payroll administration. Is that something you guys discussed in the most recent meeting?
That was 2 meetings ago. We
Two-
discussed
okay.
it at the board meeting last time. We didn't have enough people here, I don't think, right? Finance committee was okay with it.
Okay,
And we talked about it in board in October. So I'm not sure what the holdup was. I thought we were okay with going forward with it.
We didn't get it on the agenda
Didn't get
for a
the
board
agenda.
vote.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Sorry, so we have to vote on it then.
so even though this is listed on new business, I would ask for a motion at this point to transition, since it's gone through the finance committee, we just didn't get it on last minute. So I would ask for a motion to transition to Paycom for the library's payroll administration.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Marcia, sorry, I knew who it was. Is there any other questions or anything about this? I know Pete addressed it a little bit in the director's report.
Just one question. What's the length of the term for this particular vendor?
1 year with, I believe, 4 1-year renewal options.
And there are goals in the contract and
There's a service agreement, like there's standards they have to hit. Yep.
we have an out in case of.
If we have to get out of it, yep, if they don't do what they promised, we can get out.
That was my question.
Yeah, I didn't want to get stuck with another Paylocity situation.
Exactly, my point.
You said it was 15,000 extra over and above what we're paying currently.
For year one,
Really?
because there's a $6,000 installation for year one, going forward, it'll be a $9,000 year difference. 16 to 25,000.
So we're absorbing that in this year's budget.
Yes. Yep, we will find space for it. There's room in the budget for it.
Any other questions, either Tony or Pete, about that? Okay, so all in favor of approving the transition to Paycom for the library's payroll administration, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Okay, if there is nothing else from the finance committee, Alicia, personnel?
Personnel did not meet. We had some scheduling conflicts. We didn't have a whole lot of new stuff to discuss. I had already shored up the short-term and long-term director goals based on feedback at the last board meeting, and had sent that out. So unless anybody has anything major to discuss, since we didn't vote on it in committee, we are bringing just a recommendation to the board to approve these goals for Pete that largely he drafted, and then we tweaked with everybody's input on the committee and then again at the board. So I feel like everything was captured in here. I had retyped it up and it's split up by short-term and long-term goals. So short-term is within a year, long-term is past that. So yeah, basically just hoping if everyone's good with it, we can get that through.
Is there a motion to approve the short-term and long-term director goals that the personnel committee recommended? Okay, thank you, Mike P. And is there a second? Thanks, Barbara. And is there questions for Alicia, for anyone else on the committee, for Pete, about these short and long-term goals that were established?
There's a copy in the packet too. I also printed out extras, so if you want to hand these out to anybody and ask about them.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste the paper because I didn't realize they're already in the packet.
I guess
They're not.
one question.
They're not.
No, they should.
Oh, they should, after.
She might have an old packet.
Oh,
I
well,
did
then
love
he's got a copy for you right there.
Fortunately.
It didn't get aired.
I had one question, which was that I know the short-term goals were, you said it was things that were kind of under a year, but I know that for this first year, his annual performance review is coming up a lot sooner than that, just because of the timing of the hiring and getting into this and everything. So do we have a sense of which of these or any of, are going to be kind of sufficiently far along that they are, ready to, or provide some basis for review at the first review?
I think, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I went through them before the meeting and I already checked 3 of them off. So we will hit some of them. There's a couple more that we'll hit by the end of January. So in personnel, the HR manager goal, staff evaluation goal, the reporting guidelines, soliciting bids for new payroll software, reducing errors.
I think a lot of them were worded as like, they weren't like finite. There was like making progress towards this thing because we did know that with the timing, it was gonna be a little funny. So the metrics were a little less like concrete in terms of some of those things, and some were ones that we knew had to get done before that review anyway. I think going forward, they will be a full year, whereas this one's a little truncated. So some of the wording is, something that we felt like he could meet in that time. So I don't think, you didn't see anything that was like, you're absolutely not gonna hit this in the short term. A lot of them were like establish relationships with local stakeholders, but there isn't a number because that's gonna depend fully on timing and its holidays in between and who you can get a hold of and sit down and have coffee with. And everything else was, we felt attainable, I thought. When we were.
A lot of these are ongoing.
And some are ongoing, yeah. So a lot of these, we were saying like, he's gonna come with his own self-evaluation and show how he moved the needle on these items.
And I will say the personnel committee was incredibly generous and mindful of not setting me up for failure.
Yeah.
So I didn't agree to anything. I didn't.
Yes, yeah. So there's a lot of like reducing things by something and not like eliminating, right? So there's reasonable goals there. Yeah, short-term goals have a goal date of February 2025.
Okay,
So, yeah.
I see, yeah.
Any other questions about this, comments? Okay, So we have a motion and a second. So all in favor of approving the director's goals as recommended by the Personnel Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Fantastic. We are on to bill and facilities.
So facilities, as Pete said, he said going back through the history, but we were able to ascertain that the roof was actually replaced in 2017. There seemed to be some lost knowledge about that amongst the existing board members, but we were able to confirm that that was indeed the case. The roof skylight, we had been looking at this for the better part of a quarter of a year in terms of trying to get, with Jason coming in, trying to figure out what's going on. Roofing companies just weren't responsive or not unable to give us an answer on this. And so we needed to help, we needed to take up a notch and engage with an architect engineer. And that started to produce some results that give us some movement in trying to solve this. It's beyond mom and pop roofing companies' interest, business expertise really to do this. When you get up there, we did go up on the roof with Steve Rowlands last week. It's a complicated arrangement of, you know, what comes first, the way the glass was put in, or the louvers, or the solar panels, or whatever. There's a whole range of different things that need to get studied in trying to ascertain where this thing is leaking. It's compounded by the fact that we didn't have rain until today to figure out, to cooperate on exactly how to figure that out. It does seem, though, in talking with Steve, that their architecture firm does have the wherewithal to engage the contract resources that you might need to bring in to solve this problem and come up with a skylight solution, or to propose another non-skylight solution. So we're in favor of, we did vote on it in the meeting. It didn't get reflected in my minutes, but we did vote to say that we are in favor of moving forward with BRM to give us an estimate of what they think it's going to take to fix the skylight. So we'd like to probably put that to the board for a vote right now. Realizing that we did have some experiences with them. They do have a history of it. They were responsive. We have had a number of attempts to try and solve this with some other firm. With the winter coming on and realizing, that's probably the best time to get to ascertain what the issue on this is. Getting someone in place who's got the qualifications to evaluate this thing, so that in the springtime, we have a solution that we can implement, that we're all on board with. We felt was the best course of action to move forward with this. So with that, we would like to recommend to the board that we move forward with BRM to give an estimate on what it's going to take to resolve this mystery that we have.
Okay. Just a question, Bill. Wouldn't the problem be more pronounced in the winter? So that,
What's that?
wouldn't the problem be more
It will
pronounced
be
in the
more pronounced
winter?
during the winter.
Why are we waiting for the spring?
They can't really do roof work of that nature during the winter with snow and
So we could have a lot of
you need
damage.
to have, you need to, well, Jason has been working up there with some temporary fixes, trying to figure out how to stop it, but also how to channel it. So I do think we have that.
We've been mitigating, trying to mitigate that area of the roof. So yeah, it's not ideal that it has to wait longer, but it's not something we have a ton of control over.
Do you think it can fix it? Or is part of their calculus that it might need to be replaced, which is it sounds more expensive? I mean, I don't know, but
That's the big mystery that we.
yeah, we don't know the
We don't-
answer
we
to
don't
that
know.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was afraid of that.
This one is a little more complicated. If you look, it's the third bullet point, or I'm sorry, the second bullet point down there, which is approve the hiring of BRMA architects to identify the source of the skylight leak and what do we have? Provide a quote for repair. So this would actually be how it's presented in here, unless we want to amend it, is that we would need to hire the architects so they can solicit the bids for us. So that is the language that's in here, and that's how you were thinking of it coming out of facilities as well.
I don't know if I put it in that form of a context. They were offering to put together an estimate for what it would take to evaluate where the leak is coming from. And then we would figure that out and then move forward with how you go about repairing it, which I would imagine probably would involve them overseeing that part of the
Okay.
project to do that.
So just so I can understand, so initially, they're gonna give us an estimate for what they would charge us in order to do the investigation. Is what you're saying? Like, we're not at the point where,
We're not at the point for a quote for repair yet. They
right,
need to
so
investigate it.
first they're gonna give us a quote
For the investigation.
to come and look at it and figure it out. So,
Okay, then.
okay, well, yeah.
Couldn't they do both?
They provided two quotes. They could,
Couldn't they say,
maybe.
in order to evaluate this was,
But they don't know how much it's
well,
gonna
that's,
cost to
see, that's
repair it.
They
my,
have, yeah, they have to investigate first before they can.
Yeah.
yeah, no, I understand that, but, you know,
And it's probably, since they wouldn't be doing the work on the actual repair, I don't know that they would have the quote at hand, even once they
yeah, no,
diagnosed it.
I recognize it.
I think I'm comfortable with having them diagnose the problem.
I think we have to, given
Know what
what
we-
we've done
Yeah.
for the last half year to, quarter of a year to
You know,
bring firms in with very, all misses, to tell you the truth, we have to take this up a degree. And with the winter coming on, I think we sort of need to use the
Sure.
opportunity that presents to find the leak, but then also to diagnose what it's gonna take to do it. And so the most efficient way, I think, to do that at this point in time, but the best option for coming up with something we could implement in the spring would be have them give us an estimate of what it's gonna take to evaluate the mystery of that problem and find it. Then from there, hopefully we'll have the solution, or here's what you specifically need to move from a physical point of view to remedy that or to replace it. But I think those are two separate,
Mhm.
What's the cost of their time to do that, to get us to that point? Anything?
They have not quoted us anything yet. So far, they haven't charged us.
So I might suggest just a slight tweak to the language that is in the agenda. Instead of approve the hiring, because we are not hiring them to do the whole project at this point, I would just say approve and remove the hiring of, to approve the architects to identify, BRMA architects to identify the source of the skylight leak and provide a quote for repair. Would that be sufficient?
Should be.
Pete, concerns about that?
No concerns for me.
I'm just clarifying. So like the first thing they're gonna do is give us a quote about how much it's gonna cost them to come and investigate and figure this out for us. Then do we need another vote to approve hiring them at their estimated thing, or,
Well, it's probably gonna be another contract,
Gonna be
so we're
another
gonna have to approve the
contract. That was
cost
my
of that
point earlier.
contract.
So we are not actually getting the quote for repair. So I'm taking that part off the language too. So it would be approve, BRMA architects to investigate the source of the skylight leak.
the hiring of them to investigate this.
Okay, so we are hiring them. Sure, so approve the hiring of BRMA architects to identify and investigate the source of the skylight leak. How about that?
Sounds like what we're doing.
Is that the only thing, or do you want to combine it with the room organization?
I think we should discuss that.
Yeah.
Separate.
I might suggest taking them apart just because this is getting more into like hiring them to actually like do it, manage the project. So do we have a motion just for this piece that it? Okay, thank you, Mike P. Do we have a second? Okay, thank you, Marcia. Someone. Okay, so the motion is to approve the hiring of BRMA architects to identify and investigate the source of the skylight leak. Is there any other questions or comments about this one?
So the first one is out completely, the bullet point.
We're just
We haven't gotten
circling
to it.
back to it. About the women's skill.
Yeah, I thought we had we're just separating.
Yeah, we're just separating them to vote, so. Okay,
I do have to go though. Like,
okay.
not
Do we have enough do we have, you're good. Okay, no problem.
I don't have anything for board development, sorry. I'm gonna-
Oh, no. Okay, good. I'm sorry we didn't get to that, but, okay, so all in favor of, BRMA architects for the skylight leak?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. Do we want to deal with the solicitation of proposals for the Norman School room in the facilities portion too, or do you want to wait for new business?
I think new business, because I don't know how much we talked about facilities. Do you want me to do it later?
We could do it now if you
Okay,
want to.
good.
We did talk about it a little bit about bringing them in to do that. But I mean, you want to tee this up in terms
Sure.
of the discussion of it?
For sure. So as I mentioned, I think we should investigate some alternative uses for that room. I'm specifically envisioning more of a flexible space. BRMA did the original work on the room to various degrees of satisfaction to the assembled group. But again, they do know the space. I had a preliminary meeting with them to kind of talk about my vision for it, and they responded, they understood. They said if we want to solicit them for proposals of potential ideas, they could give us like if you did this, it would cost this much. If you did this, that much, that kind of thing, a menu to choose from essentially. So I think that's what I would like to do, is to move forward with them as our firm to do that work. The longer that room stays unused and vacant, I think is not a great sign of health of the organization. But I'd like to make progress on it.
So are we actually hiring them to do the, like,
Yes, I might have worded it a little strange, but I would like to solicit proposals from them of how to use the room, potential possibilities.
Do we not want to wait until the long range plan stuff is done out? Because I know that we'll put a pause in that, but it'd be good to hear from the public what they also want in that space before we pull the trigger on anything.
Mhm.
So there might be a delay depending on the timing.
I saw Barbara and then Mike.
Just a quick question. Is it possible for Amy or Nate or whoever would be in charge of sending out an email on Facebook or whatever to solicit the opinions from the thing? Mention, do you think we should use the space as a future cafe, as a movable classroom instructional space, or as a book storage area for book sales? And then just get some feedback from the community as well as your architects. And you may want to do that after you get some idea of how much it would cost. So I don't know.
Sure. So I think kind of what you're talking about would be something that be folded into the long range plan of like soliciting. I don't know if I would say like pure democracy. Which one do you like? Do you like how many of you like the cafe? But getting a value statement of which one do you value more and kind of putting it in those terms. I think that's something that's doable. My one word of caution is if we continue to go down the cafe path, just from talking to the architects, they said any cost for redoing our HVAC and our fire suppression in that room to bring it fully up to code begins at $40,000 to $50,000 as a floor. So
That's only if you're cooking there.
if we're cooking, yep, if we treat it like a cafe, there's more work that needs to be done.
So your idea is to hire them to give us some ideas and then float that to the public in terms of options?
I think that would
I'm
work.
trying to understand the
Yeah.
process.
Yep,
I don't want to cut the public.
of course.
We had enough problems.
Yeah, and I think as I mentioned in my report, I think that there were community needs that we were trying to get at with the
Right.
cafe. I think we need to see if we are meeting those needs, and if not, is the cafe the only way to meet them? If the need was, I want a cup of coffee, there are other ways we could hit that, but if it was, I want hot food and a meal,
Yeah. I think your subtext is that one of the options is going to be not to do a cafe.
that would be some of, that
And
would
that's
be a
what you'd
couple
like
of the
to present to
options.
the public, to short circuit that problem. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm thinking that's where you're coming.
I would not use those words. I'd like a full menu of options.
Mike, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I had a couple different thoughts. And one is, I'm not necessarily opposed to repurposing that space for something other than a cafe. I just am a little hesitant only just because I know that the cafe was a big part of the marketing and everything of the renovation of the library. It was a big, we did say there was a lot of, it was a frequent request from people in the course of the design of the renovation project. It was something people wanted to see. And also in the discussions before we brought in the vendor that we brought in, before we did that, it was something that was discussed and was a known issue that there was a possibility that we might have to go through more than one vendor before we found something that worked, that this was a trial and error thing. It was we were going to, pick a vendor. We were hoping everything was going to work out. There's a possibility we might have to, try again. And, there was an experience at Saratoga where they had to, had multiple vendors the course of years. And also, the model that we ended up going with the cooking on site and things like that was not necessarily the original plan. That was something that evolved over the course of just through contingencies and things. And some of the things that were discussed were, trying to get, a restaurant that had another location or whatever that wanted to bring food in and not have to cook on site, which wouldn't require, the major construction or whatever. And there may be very good reasons not to try and do the cafe again. I can think of, it may be that there really isn't vendor interest and we can't get somebody that wants to do it. It may be that the public is kind of soured on the cafe after the experience we had the other time. It may be that some of the problems that we had, the conflicts with staff and with the use of the space and everything are things that aren't really surmountable in an easy way. I can think of all these things. And like you said, there may be other ways we can meet the needs that were driving people to want the cafe. Those are all very possible, good reasons not to do it, but I feel like we really have to have that full conversation before we abandon the idea that was such a big thing that, and if it turns out that after the way it played out and things that people are like, maybe the cafe wasn't a good idea and the public isn't really pushing for it or whatever, that's fine. I'm fine with that. And I'm not a cafe person myself. I'm not a coffee person. So I have no problem with going another direction, but I just am hesitant to do it without really having that conversation that's what we're gonna do. So that's just my 2 cents. The other question I had is, it seems a little bit like, as far as, and maybe this is the right way to do it also, I'm not really sure about it, but it seems like kind of a little backwards of going to the architect first and having them, give us ideas for the space versus first kind of trying to first do the work of figuring out what we might want to do with the space and then asking somebody to kind of draw it up and figure out, what that would cost or work. It just, I don't know which is the right way to do it, but it seems counterintuitive to me to be going to the architect first before we've figured out what is the goals for the room or possible goals for the room.
So my concern too is they build themselves as cafe experts and
Yeah.
didn't take into account an HVAC issue that caused the smell and stuff. So, yeah, I feel a lot less confident on them knowing that space and suggesting something there. I'd probably be going the route you're thinking is, what does the public want to see? And that might be bid out to a few other people, only because I'd like maybe to see who else might be familiar with like other library spaces or something like that, because I feel like that was where the ball was dropped probably the most, based on this person billing themselves as a library cafe expert, which we found out they were not. So
The other issue was,
a lot of holdups based on
aside from the many problems, that is that the staff was absolutely against it. And without their buy-in, I don't think it,
One of the other things that, I don't know if it was Ray or some patron came up and shared how much money, in a sense, we're throwing away because we don't accept like new books and things and put them on the shelves. They cited statistics from, back a number of years. And there were so many people that you'll pick up a bestseller, you read it, and you donate to the library. They then resell it. And she said that, there were just so much money being wasted. So even in the interim, can we use those bookcases and accept some donations and
So I,
just see if something like that can get going? Because we're by them giving it into the little green box out there, they'd much rather give it to the library.
and I think, to me, I'll speak for myself, library book sales in some form or another and accepting book donations are a core library service. So I think that is something that we should be looking at as a unmet community need and something that's well within our lane. Could we use that space for it? Sure, I'd be hesitant to start doing something in that space that we didn't know if we were going to continue, because as we all know, it's harder to take something away from people once we've given it to them. Mike, in terms of your questions about the order that we're doing these things in, I'd like to start from something that isn't a blank slate, because of course, if we ask the community, what would you like in this room? We'll get all sorts of answers. Some will be good, some will be impractical. Some we might know better. We might have already learned a lesson about things we don't want to do again. So if we say, what's your interest? And we get a lot of people saying, well, I would love to have X, Y, and Z, and we know it's not going to work. Now we've asked for their opinion that we're not going to meet. I would love to have a little bit of a vision so that people have something to respond to. That they're like, when we say, oh, we'd like to emphasize education, well, what does that mean? It would look like this, you know? We want to emphasize a bookstore. What would it look like? Like this, you know, like having something for people to react to. So it's not just, do you like a bookstore? Yes, no.
And we're working in the facilities committee on the book sales and the book. We're thinking about getting maybe a book storage shed to store the books and sell the books out of that. So we have other ideas that we're working on for that. That could be possible. Instead of using that room, we would have a shed out there that we could sell out of or something to that effect. So we are working on other ways to address the book sales.
You know, the idea of a shed outdoors in the middle of winter, you know, you're gonna get condensation and all kinds of things out there, and little critters and creatures that are much more common out there than inside this building.
Bears.
Yeah, so. you
But
know,
I've talked to
everybody keeps
Voorhees-
talking about the
yeah.
shed, but-
Voorheesville uses it, and they said that there's the weather doesn't damage the books because they take a lot of the books out and store them in the library. So they don't get damaged and the animals don't get in the sheds. And so I reached out to them asking all those questions and they seem to be happy with, the sheds that they have.
And I don't want to cut off conversation about the shed because I think that this is all relevant to what's happening in the Normanville. But I do just want to make sure, when facilities comes up with a recommendation and it comes to the board about the shed, I just want to make sure we have our issues separately. And I understand, because my feeling is like, why can't we do something with the room now until we figure it out? But I very much respect the fact that you want to make something of this room quickly. I'm concerned about us throwing more money at the problem, which is what I'm a little nervous about with hiring the architects to just draw up some proposals without any feedback from community staff, board. That's my only.
Do we have the original information from years ago, what the public asked for before we did the cafe?
I believe we have pieces of it. I don't know that we have all of it. It might not be comprehensive.
I thought that Pete's idea of flexible space, as he described it from the King Arthur baking, was worth having somebody give a proposal as to what that would look like, because I don't know if any of us have got a informed frame of reference for what that might look like in terms of how it would, it sounds like something that would be very useful for a library. So in terms of teeing something like this up to a public to get solicitation feedback, I think we have to have a little bit more understanding as a board of trustees as to what that concept might look like. So that's why I thought it was worth bringing forward to say, we want to sort of tee up what this type of idea would look like in our library, just so we sort of know it. And then as we engage with the public, we can put this type of an option. Because I don't think it's something that the public's going to come back to us with something definitive on. Or that the mishmash of what it would come in, we would say, oh, if we had a flexible space, we could do all of the above. Unless we know what a flexible space is. And so he defined it as something that was sort of like some tech involved, some audio visual involved, some spacing and furniture involved. And that combination of things is something I think we sort of need a benchmark on to understand what we could do with that space. So that's why I basically.
But with each of those, like the movable classroom, I mean, we couldn't even get them to put outlets on that outside wall for the cafe space. And you're talking multiple screens and
Well,
stations
no, that was
and all
coming
that.
in
I mean,
after
you're
the-
talking a lot more money.
That was coming in after the fact, though. And, I don't recall, did the bid spec for that shelf space have a specific requirement for like outlets in it? It wasn't until it was not there that we said, oh, that's what they need to.
It was supposed to be there to begin with.
It was part of the original concepts, and then,
So,
yeah, but I will say that there was a lot of things that were executed on that were not run back to us once they drafted it, and then they put it in, and we're like, that's not what we
Yeah,
asked
and-
for.
and sort of
then
that
at
goes
that
to-
point, we were getting charged more money to then fix it.
That's what it goes to, how is that architect gonna get managed in the future? Is it gonna be a volunteer set of trustees doing it on a part-time ad hoc basis? Or are we gonna have somebody that's inside the house that is much more focused on running that and running them? And I think that that's,
It should be part of the plan. if we
that
need to go
you're gonna
that
need
route.
to have more, I think, staff input in managing the architect engineer as opposed to doing it through a committee that meets on a periodic basis, on a volunteer basis, on an ad hoc basis. That just,
More professional.
yeah.
And I think this is all stuff that, I mean, we can establish as we move forward.
Attention, please. Anyone who lost a key for a BMW, please come to the front desk. Anyone who lost a car key for a BMW, please come to the front desk. Thank you.
This is all like.
So is this anticipating a set of blueprints for the roof?
I don't think we're there.
At all,
Yeah.
because I would be against that.
So
Yeah, we're not there yet.
I feel, in order for me to want to move forward with this today, like, so honestly, architectural proposals, like, what are we paying for this? Because this is something, like, I would want to get an idea, like, some firms are not even going to charge you to give
Yeah,
proposals.
why don't you just ask them, since they're doing other work, to just throw out some ideas as to how, what they think the space could be used for, and not charge us for that.
I would be happy to ask for that.
Okay.
Good with that.
Unless Pete, because this is your request, do you want us to vote on this today? Are you okay with moving this to old business and you getting a little more information?
I would be fine with that.
Okay, okay. I just don't want to, take
want
it
to
away
debate
if you
it.
want us to vote on it.
And I appreciate, like, to use a phrase that Mike Kowalczyk used with me that I hold dear. I thank everyone for engaging with this. I know it's not an easy topic, so.
It's gratis. Just say, this would be a good idea to do A, B, C, or D.
Considering all the millions that they made though.
Okay, so we're gonna pause on that. We'll hold on it. I have a little star. We'll revisit it at the next meeting as part of old business.
And then, Madam President, do you need me for anything else? Because there's an accountability meeting I want to get.
I think that we are governance language, I think we're fine,
Okay,
unless anybody else has. No, please.
okay. I will leave you in Amy's care.
Okay, Amy's in charge of us now.
No more.
I think that the rest of these will
Have a good holiday.
relatively quickly unless there's a ton of discussion around the governance report and the policies that we're voting on. But if we're done with facilities, we'll move on to governance. And before Mike gets started and tells us all about what happened in their meeting, I believe based on their minutes, that all three of these policies that are the bottom three on the new business come forward to the board with a motion from the committee. So they will just need a second discussion and votes if we want to move forward with them.
All right, so, as Corey just said, we have three, policies that that we voted to bring to the full board. And I guess I'll just, do each in turn and kind of just, briefly explain what they are. The first is, we have a policy, an existing policy that's called the Review of Public Services Policy. It's in the packet, the existing policy, and we are proposing and we've voted to bring to the board that we should repeal this policy. This is just a policy, it's a one sentence policy that says the board is once a year supposed to review services in a particular brochure that the library has. In practice, we have not been following this policy. We have not done this the past several years. And I think we believe that the way this is framed, it just seems to be micromanaging the way that the library communicates the services to the public, and it just seems completely unnecessary. So we propose to just repeal this policy. It's not really doing any good, and it's not necessary. So that's all I have to say on that one, unless anyone has any questions.
Second that.
All right. Motion from City, second from Barbara. Is there any questions about it? Comments?
I'm curious why we had it so long.
Why was it revised in 2021?
Okay, so I had just joined the board when this came up. It was my first board meeting, I believe it was, I think it was my first or second board meeting on this board. And this policy came up and it was just being brought up to be reauthorized or whatever. And we ended up making a tiny tweak to it, but anyway. And I raised at that meeting, I said, why do we even have this? Like, what is this even for? And there was some discussion and everything. And eventually like, why don't we just approve it? And it ended up getting amended because before it said the brochure of services, and everybody's like, what is the brochure or whatever? And so they changed it to a brochure. And that was the amendment that happened at that meeting. But I at the time, I was baffled by why we even had this thing. So this is for me, coming full circle back.
Mm-hmm. All right, other questions?
Check it. And in case anyone's curious, none of the other Upper Hudson libraries have a policy like this. This is just us for some strange reason. So it's not like us getting rid of this. This makes us somehow an outlier. This is-
I mean, we don't even know what the brochure is.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of repealing the library's review of public services policy, say aye.
Aye.
Any, no, okay, everybody was up, so. Okay, that one passes. On to the next, Mike.
All right, so the next one, and these two are a little bit related, but we'll do them one at a time. But the first one is the social media policy. And in your packet, there's both a clean version of the revised social media policy, and there's also a version that has the changes, the kind of a black line with all the, changes in it. The thing that motivated us revisiting this is we needed to update the list of basically the kind of prohibitions, the list of things that we list are not allowed, and the reason for this is our existing list is not legally compliant. And this has been an area that over the past few years, there's been a lot of case law, including cases that have gone all the way to Supreme Court, but a lot of lower cases, federal courts about the social media policies and whether they are, or the use of moderation of social media by public entities, and that being compliant with First Amendment concerns. And the main issue is there's a requirement that for a public body, if you make a forum open to people to be able to comment on things, then you have to, there's several requirements, but the most important is viewpoint neutrality. And that is a very stringent standard, viewpoint neutrality. And it really doesn't give you a lot of room to be deleting comments or prohibiting people from posting as freely as our policy suggested we're going to. So that was the main, so we used in part, there was guidance that came from the ALA about social media, and we've relied on that. And also just, recent case law relating to this. So that's the most important change is that portion, which is on the first, it's the list of things the following are not permitted in that bulleted list. And then we made some other kind of tweaks and changes to the language, which you can see on the, the one with the track changes, but that was the significant purpose for that. So I'm happy to answer any questions if people have any specific questions or anything about that, but that was the rationale and that's what we're asking for.
You guys seem to really do your due diligence on this, so I appreciate it. So the motion is coming from the committee to adopt a revised social media policy. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Bill. And then you have a question or comment?
No, just, this is the ALA language or is it
No,
modified?
the ALA did not have like a model policy, but they basically said, their framework said basically if you look at the listing of under the second bullet point where after it says including but not limited to, and then it has that list there, that listing came directly out of the ALA's guidance. And it tracks categories like under First Amendment case law of things that are not protected speech. So those are areas where you're safe to be able to say, we can, if you post in these areas, these are not, protected, and therefore we can delete those comments and prohibit you from posting those. But beyond that, you're very limited. And so that's where we got that listing from. Their recommendation in the ALA was basically try and avoid putting yourself in the position of being a moderator of people's comments and do it as little as you can possibly get away with it. That was kind of that was the takeaway from their guidance.
So I don't know if this is out of scope, because this was actually an issue that came up, I think, not last year, but the year before. Because this is just the policy, not like a process for handling any complaints or something like that. Okay, so this might be the wrong place to ask. It was just that I had that shirt that caused a kerfuffle and the post was taken down, but it seems like that would be covered by his second bullet point, protected by First Amendment. So then, yeah, my thing is more a process thing, which is not included in this, so never mind.
Yeah, we didn't, it wasn't kind of in the policy, so we didn't really address that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Any other questions or comments? for the governance committee.
Yeah.
And I imagine that when we have the new public information officer, that this will be shared and that a lot of these things will get worked out to. Or I'm sorry, to not PIO anymore, but the new marketing. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on adopting the revised social media policy. All in favor of adopting this? Anyone opposed? No abstentions? Perfect. We've got one more.
Yes, so now move on to the public comment policy. And we did this one as well because some of this is just tracks the same changes that we made to the social media policy as far as the, types of comments that are not permitted. And this is something that actually there's been a significant amount of recent litigation over just due to kind of public issues with public comment at government bodies, school boards and town things and whatever. And now the First Amendment case line here is pretty clear and you can't really, you're pretty limited on cutting people off or stopping them on the basis of the content of the comments that people want to make. So that's the bullet point. That's the second to the last bullet point on there is kind of tracking the same kind of exceptions. And we also had a few other changes in here that we made just to in the first bullet point. We added some language just to try and track our actual practice in our meetings, that how we actually treat public comment when we've had people come to talk. So we just wanted to kind of make our policy match what we actually do in practice. And then we added language for if we have a special meeting specifically to get comment from the public, to note that we can restrict the comments to the subject matter that the special meeting is for. That's to address, for example, we had a special meeting for public comment about the cafe, and we would have been within our rights to, if somebody wanted to come up and complain about something that had nothing whatsoever to do with the cafe, to say, not tonight, tonight's for the cafe, that's what we're here for. So just to address that. And then those bottom sections there are new. The board response one was just to try and kind of put in make it just a visible part of our policy to kind of inform people our practice with respect to response to comments, and just to let people know it is not our practice to immediately respond to public comment and to just say, doesn't mean we won't address it or take into consideration in some way or another, but not immediately, not right away, and just to kind of spell that out. So that's what this is. So if anyone has any questions, happy to answer. Yeah.
Mike, could you clarify for the public why personal attacks on board members, staff members will not be tolerated? No more language that is considered offensive, harassing, or profane.
So that has been specifically litigated, and there was a school board that was basically, found liable and had to pay people's attorney's fees for cutting people off on the basis of personal attack. Because personal attack is that's a expression of, people have a right to express their opinion, and if that opinion involves direct criticisms of members of the board or the administration of the library or whatever, they're allowed to do that. That's like something that they within their right to do. So that's, we can't.
You talked about that case at the.
Yeah, so it's not, it's, we can't say you can have a public comment, but if you're, critical of specific people, then that's out of bounds. And that's something that has been litigated and is,
Yeah, direct attack can seem vague, because that could be anything like.
Yeah,
hurt my feelings, even though it's totally fair to be like.
It's another issue that's come up in the cases, is that a lot of these things can be vague, and sometimes there's been challenges on the basis of vagueness that even if there are certain things that go beyond the bounds that could have been prohibited when you use things like personal attack, that's too vague, and it's just impermissible to not give people clear guidance on what they can and can't say. So we're trying to just kind of hew to the the case law and the so
Or obscenity and defamatory or libelous statements, will help, if it gets to.
Yeah, it's.
Or a topic like, hey, your sweater sucks, you'd be like. Not
And part of the issue is, problems have arisen here and there, but for the most part, we have not had a problem. Even when we had our public comment thing and we were worried, how is this going to play out? There's been a lot of online, anger about the cafe closure and all that stuff. I mean, when we actually had the public comment thing, people were civil and people were on point and people made their points, and even people that were a little angry about something or other or whatever, I don't think we should, try and, base our policy around, problems that we haven't actually had in practice and probably won't have, rather than, I don't know.
It just seems that, personal attacks is all guide the beholder as to what's defamatory, libelous, or or true threats. Those are all personal attacks, but,
Yeah.
how you define that, you almost need to have the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that was where the ALA's guidance came in, where they said, look, even some of these things that are not protected, like, you don't want to put yourself in the position of having to police them, as,
I think the big one is if anybody's making a physical threat, but that's under true threat, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, true threat.
So I think the 3-minute, is that our position or is that?
That was our existing policy, and that's very common in public comment, like, that's a very common, like, 3 minutes is like, people, that's very, very, there's nothing that requires us to have 3 minutes be the limit. We could do less, we could do more, but that's very common. And so,
Yes, it's the same reason why we don't comment on the comment, because otherwise the whole meeting would take,
So. Any other questions or comments about this? So the motion to adopt the revised public comment policy has come from the committees. We just need to second on this.
Second.
Thank you, Mikey. And do we have any other? Anything else? Okay. All in favor of approving the adoption of the revised public comment policy, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any oppositions, abstentions? Fantastic. We're going to power through the rest of this and we're going to get out of here in like 5 minutes. Long Range Planning Committee, we submitted a report. We've actually met one more time. We met last night. So there is nothing else that's a part of that. So I encourage you to read through this and also be on the lookout. We are just finalizing our questions that are going to go out the survey portion. There's going to be a board piece and there's going to be a staff piece, but they're going to be asked the same questions. That will go out in early December and we'll be asking for you to complete that within 2 weeks. Is there anything else from long range planning that I feel like should come to the whole? Like I said, I tried to really include everything in here from our first meeting, and that's a lot of what we discussed. Narina has left, but she said board development did not meet. Mike, does Cafe Investigation have anything to report?
no, and I'm the holdup on this, and I've been doing some revisions on a draft thing that I'm hoping to circulate shortly, but it's just slow going, so.
Okay.
It's me, it's on me.
Alicia, is there anything from the foundation?
No, they're meeting right now.
Oh,
Orchard Tavern West, so I am here, but I will be getting a recap of what they discussed, so.
The only thing that I want to report from Upper Hudson, in case you have not heard, is that the executive director, who we all probably know, or at least have had a passing acquaintance with, Tim Burke, has announced that he's retiring. He'll be retiring in the spring. The actual retirement date has not yet been set. The president, her name is Susan Keitel. She has already started forming the search committee. Myself and 2 other board members along with her on the search committee for the new director. They're appointing someone from the Directors Association to the full search committee as well. So we'll have a director from one of the Upper Hudson libraries. And then we're still trying to work out the staff involvement. But we hope to get that process up and running soon. And that's where we're at. But yes, he'll be retiring in the spring. So take advantage of his knowledge and skill set now if you want it, because we don't have it for that much longer. Is there any old business that we need to talk about? Lovely. We rolled through everything that was listed on news business. I just have one item that I would like to bring up now, which is we have at times canceled our December meeting if there is nothing pressing and necessary for us to meet about. How do we feel about that?
Definitely in favor.
In favor? Okay. Is there anybody that has anything pressing that they would like us to hold a December meeting for?
No, I mean, there's a possibility we might have an investment policy ready if we
I don't think we can get, we can hold off on
that can wait.
We've been so long without.
Does it cause us any issues to delay the check register approval for a month?
We have done it before. George, do you see any issues with us delaying the check register approval for a month?
I think you should all meet because I'll be away from the 13th to
That's the
January
end of
1st.
that.
Nice.
No, I don't see why.
The only thing is just the investigation report, if there's any kind of approval needed
Yeah, I
for
hear
that.
But, I mean, if there's nothing pressing that can hold until January.
Right.
Amy, do you have any business from administration that you think would need to be dealt with in December?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Do we
Um,
need to do anything for Allison's contract?
Don't think so.
just go in the regular cycle. It could go to
Yes, it's gonna
personnel
go right on.
later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just let me know what you need.
So in order to formalize this, because I do not remember if we have formalized a vote on canceling meetings, but let's just do it because I don't know. So I would say, I would ask for, I am moving that we cancel the December meeting pending anything else that comes up. Barbara is seconding. All in favor of canceling the December meeting?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We will revisit it if anything emergency occurs between now and then.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I just want to make sure there's no final public comment. Amy, anything from you? Ray, anything that you would like to add?
No, I have a lot to say about the issue regarding the use of that room.
Okay. Do you want to hold until we're discussing it as old business next meeting, or would you like to speak now? Okay,
I mean, it ties in not only to the use of the room, but the whole issue, Mike?
Yeah.
The whole issue of whether or not we should consider a cafe, which I really think is a bad idea. Only because I read that report, the racist report, and the cafe turned out to be a total train wreck for obvious reasons, okay? I mean, I read the report. And in my view, I stated this at the last meeting, not to beat a dead horse, but it just got totally mismanaged in terms of the implementation thereof. And if you read that report, you had a lot of people that work in the library that were totally against the cafe from day one. I mean, they thought that their duties were being attacked, in terms of, this is not what we should be doing in a library. You didn't have buy-in from a lot of the employees, which I thought was like really bad when I read that report. The library didn't seem to have us act together from a standpoint of the implementation of the cafe. And I just read that report, and it's kind of like just bled, like, this is a total train wreck from day one. I mean, I hate to be so blunt, but I mean, this room is full of smart people. And I just look back as a taxpayer and say, how did this happen? And then forget the racist. I mean, that's just a total bunch of lies. There's not one person in this room and in this library who has ever come in this library that has 1 ounce of racism, as far as I'm concerned. But that's just a bad decision that was made by the powers that be in the library to do a cafe. For a lot of reasons. When I first heard of this cafe, my first question was, does a profit-making entity belong inside of a library? I thought it was oil and water. But I don't know, but then now you got that room. And I got a whole speech with about the whole issue of book sale. And I can take that up at another meeting. But I think this library and the powers that be totally blew the fact that once you spent $9 million on upgrading the library and open the library and there's no book sale. And I'm saying, what happened to the book sale? And now we're talking about a book sale and you're just like reinventing the wheel. It's like you broke something, like you're trying to fix something that wasn't broken. To me, it was a no-brainer to open up the library. And then I started asking questions like, how come there's no more book sale? And then I become aware of the fact that the room that was used for storage of the books, they used to get donated because before you spent $9 million, you used to accept book donations in this building. Okay? So now you don't expect book donations. And you can't sit in that parking lot for 10 minutes without seeing 3 cars drive in and donate books. Thousands and thousands of books
have been donated to this library ever since the library opened up after the pandemic. And all those books should have been available to the library and to the community for a book sale. So now we're talking about, oh, do a shed. It's like, what you had worked. Why did you blow it? The powers that be made a decision. And I didn't see any announcement because I read that brochure that I think Tim Wiles and his folks put together as this is what's going to happen back in 2019. This is going to happen, what's going to happen with the library based on the renovation. And I read that thing 3 times and nothing in that states that when we open back up, we're going to do away with the monthly book sale. So I started asking questions. I couldn't get a straight answer. Then I started getting phony answers. Total BS, the fact that you couldn't get volunteers. That's just smoke and mirrors. I asked Tim straight, not to get on his case, but I asked him straight out, Tim, how come there's no more book sale? I asked him last summer of 23. How come we don't have a book sale? Oh, we can't get volunteers. You mean to tell me in a community of 35,000 people, you couldn't find 6 or 7 people to run a book sale? So I conducted my own investigation. And the first 3 ladies I talked to, they told me that was total BS. So we're available. I don't know who's telling you that we're not. So you just had a book sale that worked fine, plus it brought in $25,000 a year. And the ladies who ran it did a great job. And it was in the Hellerbrook room. You couldn't come here. If you came here at 5 or 10 on a Saturday for a book sale, you had to stand in line behind 30 people. I just attended the book sale on September 20th over Colony. And they had a line at 5 or 10 that was long as from here. The end of the line, you'd have people standing out in the middle of Western Avenue for the book sale. And I went in there, it was well organized. Volunteers coming out of the woodwork. And I was saying, how come we don't do this kind of thing at the Gilliland Public Library? The thing that drives book sales are donated books, okay?
Good ones.
Okay, and the donated books, I mean, I talked to the guy who picks up those books. And I said, what happens to these books? He said, I sell them. I said, what happens? He says, they end up some of them end up over.
The library will be closing in 15 minutes.
So in my estimation,
Materials you'd
in my
like
own
to take
opinion,
out,
I think the
Please bring
library,
them to the checkout desk immediately.
the town of Gilliland totally blew the fact that you got rid of the book sale. And it was done on the slide too, from my own perspective. It just kind of like slipped in and the library opened up $9 million later. Where's the book sale? That room, which is now a comfort room, because that room got renovated, that used to be the storage room for the books. And you used to accept donated books to this building. So now, the people that run this library, which I guess is the people in this room and the former director, made a conscious decision that when we open up this library after the renovation, we're gonna do away with the book sale. That had to be a conscious decision because that room got renovated. And so I said, where are the books? Oh, we're not gonna store books in the library anymore. So the next question is, well, you're not gonna do book sales anymore. I guess not. I think that's a bad idea, but it's my own opinion, obviously.
No, but we appreciate you sharing your opinion, and I don't want to cut you off by any means.
Okay.
We're right at about time, if that's okay, and we invite you back anytime. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
She did.
Marcia did already. Okay. Thank you, Barbara. All in favor of adjourning? Okay, thank you.
Like,
We did not officially vote on it.
Let's officially vote.
No, we did.
We did.
We voted.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I have it.
Okay, if they have notes.
You made the motion, Barbara.
I did
People
make
raise
the
their
motion.
hand.
Yes,
I got
You
it.
did it.
perfect.
I had to think about it for a second.
Thank you.
very variety.
You were doing